This is Heart Rhythm TV, and I'm Daniel Alyesh, here with the September Heart Rhythm Journal Spotlight. And as a broader context, this article focuses on a discussion of PFAS. PFAS is deemed one of those forever chemicals that, as far as in the national psyche, understanding its impact on the general population has become of interest. Substances that with our foods that involve heat tolerance, such as Teflon pans, are known to have PFAS. And because of the molecule stability, we are finding that stability in the human body and persistence as a forever chemical is of concern. It has been linked to cardiovascular issues with dyslipidemia, as well as thyroid issues and multiple cancers. And for that reason, I'm joined today with Dr. Pierce Vatterott. He's of the Heart Rhythm Center at the Minneapolis Heart Institute. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
And his piece was an excellent discussion on the application or understanding of PFAS as it relates to the electrophysiology practice. And so, Pierce, for my first question, I wanted to start off with a discussion of PFAS overall. Can you give us a high-level discussion of what it is and why electrophysiologists and their patients should be aware of them and concerned about them?
Thank you. So per and polyfluoroalkyl substances is a group of 12,000 compounds known as PFAS, or forever chemicals. And they touch us in, as you mentioned, in our daily lives, from medical devices, contacts, lenses, automotive, aerospace, alternative energy, cookware, personal hygiene products, pizza boxes. The reason for writing the article is to educate the heart rhythm community, because it's active in the media and active in our legislation, actually state legislation. And the group of PFAS of more than 12,000 compounds is grouped as a single class in the media. There is well-intentioned laws being passed or attempted to be passed that are going to be detrimental to the care of our patients because of the lack of understanding by the media, general public, and legislators. The purpose of this article is to educate the heart rhythm community in PFAS. And let me start off with saying that what is the definition of a PFAS? What is a forever chemical? There are multiple definitions. This also complicates the issue. The EPA has one definition, the European Union, US states. In our article, we use the most common definition, which is stating that any member of a class of fluorinated compounds containing at least one fully fluorinated carbon atom. And that carbon-fluorine bond is the strongest covalent, they share electrons, bond in organic chemistry. Thus, the moniker forever chemicals.
Well, thank you for taking us back to organic chemistry, or OChem, or however we all learned it is called. Yeah, I think that covalent bond is extremely strong. And I think, again, that is what leads to our concerns about the accumulation of these substances in human beings over time. But Pierce, I think that it's important. You highlighted an important context. There are 12,000 compounds. There are different sizes, different impacts. Let's change our discussion now a little bit to medical devices, okay, and the PFAS that we encounter, in electrophysiology, and how is it different, and how is it important to understand their impact?
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to start off with talking about that. As you mentioned, there's 12,000 compounds, and they fall into distinct classes with vastly different chemical, biological properties, and toxic properties. I'm first going to talk about the bad kids, okay? These are small molecule water-soluble PFAS. They are water-soluble. Think of the first PFAS were developed in 1938. I will tell you they were critical in the Manhattan Project and the development of major technologies in the US. But we couldn't even test for them in the water supply till the late 1990s, 2000, and they've spread throughout the world. The small molecule water soluble ones are the ones of concern. They cross cell membranes. They are biologically and chemically active. They bind to proteins. And as you mentioned, when they bioaccumulate, they take years to clear from the human body. I mean, years to, to you reach steady state. It's very hard to even reach steady state. You continue to bioaccumulate. And higher levels, again, as you mentioned, Dan, have been associated with hyperlipidemia, LDL, liver toxicity, thyroid disease, fertility, low birth weights. In fact, PFOA is now considered one of the water soluble compounds considered to be carcinogenic. So let's put those over here. Those are the bad kids. Those are the ones that get the attention. When they're talking about PFAS, like one of the most disheartening thing over the weekend, which I knew it was coming, was the report of PFAS in beer. Okay. And so, and of course, what does it relate? How much is in the water supply? But fluoropolymers, such as ETFE and PTFE that we use in medicine, are dramatically different compounds. They're 200 times larger than these water soluble. They're water insoluble. They lack chemically active functional groups. They do not cross cell membranes. They do not bioaccumulate in the human body. We've been using them for more than 50 years. The first ones we placed were AV shunts in children more than 50 years ago. They've not been found to be cause health concerns. If I ask our audience to go to the FDA website, on August 8th, the FDA reaffirmed the safe use of fluoropolymers in devices, and they state in there, independent research by ECRI, that's an independent group that the FDA uses, finds no conclusive evidence of health concerns.
That's very, very helpful. I think it's important for the viewers and listeners to understand, I think that PFAS is going to be in our vocabulary more. And I think patients are going to ask questions, maybe they're going to be informed, but they're going to say, hey, I read that your devices can have these coatings or use these polymers. To what degree should I be concerned about this given what I see about PFAS? And I think your summary is perfect. These are established, these are stable, these are longer chain, these are not, the ones that we hear about maybe in our lining of our microwave butter popcorn bags. This is something that's much more established. And I think the safety has been verified.
Very nicely stated. Thank you for bringing that up.
So I wanted to, in reading your paper, I found it to be very interesting, the discussion of, now we're gonna deviate ourselves into something that's also in our psyche as far as public health, which is microplastics. Okay. So tell me, to what degree is there a connection between medical polymers and concern for microplastics in the context of electrophysiology?
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you to say fluoropolymers, because polymers themselves, fluoropolymers gives it that forever characteristic. Great statement. It's forefront. Many of our patients are concerned. You can think about, we're putting this device in, and they say, what's the lead coated with? Well, a type of plastic, polyurethane. They're going to think, what about microplastics? So anyway, all plastics create microplastics. And most in our society are textile, and they come from substances like clothes, but also from tires, plastic bottles, packages, personal care products. And they are primarily polyester, polyethylene, and polypropylene. Okay, they are different than fluoropolymers. Fluoropolymers really produce negligible amounts both in the environment and within the human body. And really, for several reasons, one of which is they're forever chemicals. And as much as early on we say, oh, it's terrible, we have these forever chemicals, these small water soluble ones. Yes, those are terrible. But there's a part of Do you want a forever compound in your ICD lead and your pacing lead, something that's reliable? And so, because they are forever compounds, they break down less in the human body. Um, they and we also use very small amounts, actually. Again, because of the quality of the material, the processability, how you can make such thin layers and miniaturization, we only use micrograms to grams in our devices. And so there is one study that we quote in the paper that comments that they really didn't find any negligible levels of microplastics in patients with implanted devices. There's a very interesting study that was created in response to the concerns over PFAS. It's called the Leachable Study, and that is in press. And it's researchers that looked at return product, primarily ICD leads. And so they had leads 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, and et cetera. And they looked at that PTFE or ETFE that lines the cables or the coils, and was there any migration of those materials or breakdown products of those materials into the next materials? And essentially, no, none detectable. So overall, the contribution of fluoropolymers to microplastics is negligible at most.
That's a great place to be. I think that when you talk about a fluoropolymer, especially as applied to a medical device, and what we do with, defibrillators and the patient projecting forward having a lifetime of having the device, I think you want a forever polymer. I saw,
Right.
you know, so I think that it's important for us to understand that the properties and the stability of these compounds are why we wanted to apply them and why we have been applying them. And I think these are distinct and very helpful tools in the electrophysiology practice. Now, for the viewers who go to work every day and take care of patients, can you kind of specifically describe fluoropolymers and how we apply them in our EP practice?
Sure. So this also is going to guide some of our further discussion or questions that'll be coming up. Fluoropolymers have a constellation of unique properties that no other substance on this earth has. And that is what guides us to use them in medical devices. And in fact, that what guides us, if you think about, if you have this material, you have this construct, that a lot of our modern minimally invasive and invasive properties or characteristics or materials, the entire engineering is based on these materials. I didn't say that very well, but the entire design is based on these materials, not just in cardiology, but in any minimally invasive or invasive field, from GI to nephrology to ophthalmology, all. So the characteristics are important to understand, because as an EP doctor, you'll get it. We get it. One of them is the lubricious or slipperiness. How slippery are these compounds? PTFE has the third lowest, or the third best, however you want to say, lubricious nature of any material known on this earth. The first two are salts, or essentially rocks, and it's kind of hard to put a rock on a guide wire, okay? But also, they're incredibly flexible, so you can put a lead into a beating heart to last for 30 years, and it's flexible, incredibly strong, biostable. It doesn't interact with other, and corrosive resistance. Think of the polyurethane disasters in the past, but it it doesn't react to other compounds or biological materials. It is excellent insulation, what they call the dielectric quality, that you can use a thin layer of it. It's thermally stable. This is why we use it in space and in the Manhattan Project, but it tolerates the human body long term. And in the process of making the materials, its processability, in other words, the process of making it, is critical. So it really breaks down to, in EP, we use it not only in the manufacturing process, but the delivery of our products and the products themselves.
Excellent summary. I think, what you describe is a lot of characteristics of the materials that make them ideal suitors for what we're trying to accomplish with heart rhythm care and implantable devices, et cetera. So I guess in a way you've answered my next question, but I guess I will ask you it in an explicit way because I think people will want to know, what has been our understanding and our challenges around finding replacements for fluoropolymers?
Sure. Um, well, currently there's no alternative present. There's just nothing present. Nothing that has the constellation of qualities. And one thing I also, and I apologize I didn't bring up earlier, is I mentioned all these unique qualities to these fluoropolymers, and being a forever chemical is why it's biostable. But also, when you want to miniaturize something, think of our leadless pacers, the batteries in them. We have fluoropolymers in those batteries that protect the corrosion and the two compounds of uh, intermixing and shorting out. Um, we're able to miniaturize devices because we can ask one material to provide multiple functions. That's why our devices have gotten smaller. So anyway, there. Thank you for letting me go back and introduce that thought, but there's currently no alternative that has all the qualities that when I've sat with material scientists, they'll talk up to 8 or 9 different qualities that other materials, the current material types of silicone and polyurethane might have 2 or 3, but not all of them. So we can't find just a drop-in replacement. That is not possible currently. And in fact, the a number of the engineering groups, such as the American Institute of Medical and Biological Engineers and the FDA themselves, feel that to develop a new material, find it, do the age testing, sterilization, the iOS 10993 testing, the preclinical animal testing, biocompatibility, clinical trials, it will take decades to replace the materials. Decades. And we may not have a better answer. This is why we try to promote, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's continue to study this. In finding those replacement materials, one is a drop-in is highly unlikely. We might get close. So then do we redesign the entire approach? Like, it only takes a few microns of thickness of a fluoropolymer on a guide wire, such as PTFE on a guide wire, to make it slippery. Well, do we really need all the insulation characteristics on that? Can we find something different? So that would be redesigning a number of materials or rethinking the way we pace the heart. Does it have to be devices with leads or leadless pacers? Are there other methods that wouldn't use these materials? So that all is going to take a considerable amount of time because there will be unintended consequences. And I've learned this in my material research and lead construction, et cetera, that anytime you change something in a device, you get unintentional consequences. And so we will, do we want to exchange lead CID reliability now of 97% with new leads and new design? I would say let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but carefully research this and always look for the safety of our environment, for the human race, and for our personal patients, and protect the supply for now.
Iris, thank you for that great summary. With regards to what you were just saying, I think we always got to keep our eyes open for, what is the next thing. However, your point is well taken. What is the problem we're solving by changing PTFE and leads or et cetera? I struggle to, given the track record, given what we've seen, I think that there are unique characteristics that are best served by the status quo. I think that.
Please go ahead.
Oh,
I was going to add, I think it's important for our audience to understand where we use these materials. An example, as I said, we use them across industry, and is that such as guide wires. I mean, why is a guide wire so slippery? it's because of fluoropolymers. Think of the soft plastic sheets that are slippery that we do. Those are the ablation catheters that um, take the qualities of flexibility, durability, electrical insulation, and lubriciousness to slide up into the human heart. To talk about the uh, CID leads, where we have the PTFE or ETFE on the cables that allows those cables to go through millions of iterations of heart contractions with the cable sliding inside that PTFE and not breaking. We're actually able to extrude a screw on a screw and lead because it's coated with ETFE and PTFE, allowing it to slip, that screw to slip in that material to extrude and come back. I personally feel the reliability of leads currently, because of the insulation qualities, we couldn't get that with polyurethane and silicone, is why these lead survivals are in the high 90s now. And then lastly, I want to comment how they're useful in batteries, and that the reason for the miniaturization and the allow that has allowed us to make leadless pacers, because we can use materials in their batteries and other parts of the components that fulfill multiple um, duties. So thank you for letting me add that point, but I wanted to add some relevance to what materials is playing a role. We know that the fluoropolymers themselves are not dangerous. That's been researched. There has been criticism in the past during the production of fluoropolymers. You get these PFOA and PFOS. In fact, that's been the big concern with the creation of Teflon. Those PFOA and PFOS have been used in the past for creation of fluoropolymers as a processing aid called a surfactant. Those processes in the United States have now are disappearing. They're no longer used. There have been attempts to replace that with a material called Gen X that may have the same problems. It's another small molecule PFAS. So the processes are either going away, they're looking for new replacements, or in a closed water system where you use water to rinse the products, and then you have these water soluble compounds in the water at the end of the process, then you destroy the water soluble PFAS. So that's being done to protect our environment. So what I wanted to add here is that there has been truth in the past that although fluoropolymers are considered safe, people have still been critical of the manufacturing process, which is rapidly changing and already changing in a number of places to make it safer for our environment.
Well, a nail on the head there. This is exactly how we apply it in EP. And I want to make the point that those same qualities in the stable fluoropolymers that we use, to say, hey, we want this device to be durable. We want it to be optimized for rhythm care. We want it to be, all those great forever qualities are the same kind of similar context where we say, hey, in the small molecule formation, right? In the setting of now getting back to the whole public health discussion, soluble, accumulating bioaccumulation in the body, those same properties can be of concern when we talk about those distinct, more small molecule PFAS as opposed to stable fluoropolymers like we apply in EP. But Pierce, thank you very much for your article this month in Heart Rhythm Journal. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for allowing me to be here, and for our group, thanks you for helping call attention to our concern regarding the misunderstanding of fluoropolymers.
And thank you all for tuning into Heart Rhythm TV.